Hey guys, I'm going to show you how to make a mosquito repelling device that you don't have to put directly on your skin. You don't have to spray it all around you or use a special device. This is just something you can put together with 2 kitchen spices. It costs almost nothing to make, but it will keep mosquitoes far away from you, whether you're a group of just a couple of people or you have large groups of people. I'll show you how to do this where it will keep your zone where you're outdoors completely mosquito free. Now, there's no limit to how small you can make it or how large, just depending on the ingredients that you have. You can make it something like this. It would be perfect for a backpacker or a hiker, just for an individual, or you could use something as large as this unused paint can that you can order online, never had any paint in it. You want to make sure you don't use a can that has had paint in the past, but like I said, you can go to any size. You can use these stainless steel containers, which are a little bit larger. You could also use stainless steel pots and pans, so it's just limited to your imagination. So I'm going to make one in these smaller type cans and show you how easy it is to put together and how effective it is at keeping mosquitoes away from you while you're enjoying the outdoors. Now, as I said a moment ago, these type of cans can be purchased online and they've never been used for anything, but you can use them for paint if that's what you're doing for a project. Now, I always have some type of project going. You can go as small as these tiny cans. I'll have to get a screwdriver to get that top off, but depending on just how much ingredient you have to put in it, you can use any one of these. And I think these are one of the most perfect sizes because using glass, there could be a chance that it could crack. So I would recommend using a metal canister as far as step one. Now, this is an optional item because one of the ingredients in our repelling device smolders if you light it, so it doesn't necessarily need this, but I think this really helps boost it. You can use something like rubbing alcohol, paraffin, lamp oil, or even charcoal lighter. But what you have to remember about charcoal lighter fluid, it's going to put off more caustic smoke, so you may not want to use this if you're in a very tight group. But if this is just something you have sitting and it's about 5 or 6 feet away from you, you could use lighter fluid. Paraffin oil lamp might be ideal, but again, a little bit more smoke. But the cleaner your alcohol, the higher percentage it is, like this 99% or 91%, you're going to get a much cleaner burn. So I would recommend using at least 91% rubbing alcohol. So you're going to need a wick for this system, and I recommend getting some tiki torch wicks, and I think these work actually better. You can make your own wick or you can use a candle wick, but I think these are the optimum size and the optimum burn rate. So I'll put a link in the description of these as well, but you can use any type of cotton. I just think it works best with these type of wicks because of their size and also because they have the wicking motion, capillary action from the base of the container we're going to be using. Now, there's a little bit of a debate on what coffee actually is. Some people will say it's not a spice, some people will say it's a berry, but technically for me, I call it a spice. So this is one of the main ingredients of this device, but we're going to be adding something to it to make it even more effective. So just remember, you can use fresh coffee grounds or you can use coffee grounds, but you need to make sure they're dry. So you can set it out in the sun or you can put it in the oven and let it just dehydrate, put it on its lowest setting. But just remember, you're going to need dry coffee grounds. Now I'm going to use this mid-sized can to demonstrate how this entire process works. So we need to get a pretty close estimation of about 2/3 filled with the coffee grounds. So we just want to carefully pour that. I'm going to make a little bit of a mess, but that's okay. Normally I would use used coffee grounds for this, but just for this video, I'm using fresh, and it's a little messy here. I'll clean that up in a second. And like I said, we're filling it up about 2/3 of the way there, and then we're going to add our second ingredient. All right, so the next thing we're going to add is 2 tablespoons of cinnamon powder, and they can be kind of heaping tablespoons. And we're going to mix this well, but I just want to get an accurate measurement, so I'm putting this in here first, and then I'm going to put it in a container we can mix it very well. All right, so I'm going to take this plastic pitcher, and I'm going to add our coffee grounds and our cinnamon to that. Try not to breathe any of the dust because cinnamon in your nasal passages will be quite irritating, and I'm just going to carefully mix it for about 30 seconds to 1 minute to make sure that our coffee grounds and cinnamon are well mixed. Now, I always have these on hand, and this will really make it easier to mix, but if you take a paint stick and just put it in there and just flip it around over and over, because we want our cinnamon to be well mixed with our coffee. We don't want it sitting in a clump in one area of our ground. So just take something like a stick or a paint stick and just carefully mix for about a solid minute until you get the 2 ingredients well mixed. Now, like I said in the beginning, you can use any type of metal container you want. You can use glass, but you have to be more careful because around this rim here, it can get really hot. So you just want to make sure it's not some type of very thin glass. Maybe a mason jar would be okay. And since alcohol burns so purely, this is 91%, and the 99 burns even more pure. In the daytime, it's really hard to see the flame. It's almost invisible. So when you get ready to put it out, don't touch it. Just drop that on there and let it snuff it out. But just remember, don't pick up the sides because this can become extremely hot and it can be very easy to be burned on it. So just remember, once you've lit it, make sure you put it out with the lid and let it cool down before you try to move it, because the entire can can become very hot. Now the next thing we're going to do before we put our coffee grounds back in, we want to put in about 2 to 3 ounces of the rubbing alcohol, and you would of course upsize this in the larger containers, but we just want it to kind of sit on the bottom. And of course this is going to be absorbed a lot by our coffee grounds because they are very dry. So that's another thing that's really important to remember, is that you want your coffee grounds to be perfectly dry, because if they have a lot of high moisture content, a lot of water in them, it may not smolder or burn properly. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add one of these tiki torch wicks. I keep saying, want to say witches, but we're going to put one of these in there, and I'll show you exactly how you make sure it stays in the center of the container. Now when we go to place our wick in here, we're going to need to cut it slightly lower than where our lid's going to be. So as you can see, this lid has a little bit of a lip on there, so you don't have to cut it down below the surface, but once you put it in there, you want to make sure that it's not going to prevent the lid from going on cleanly. So you just take it where you know it's going to be at, and just take a pair of scissors and cut these out. These are excellent. These have an excellent wicking action. So as you can see, it's right there at the level, so when I put the lid back on, it won't fall over, or it won't want to not go back on. I'll be able to put it out very quickly once I set the lid back on there. So it's important to remember we want our wick to be right at the surface level. Now before you pour your coffee grounds in there, let the wick sit in your alcohol or whatever fuel source you're using, because it's already halfway up. It's about there already. So this has an incredible wicking action. The alcohol is only about maybe 1/3 or less down at the bottom. So these have an excellent wicking action. So just lay it up against the side until it pulls the fuel source all the way to the top. You'll be able to see it because it slightly changes color. You can see it's a little bit darker, and it's wet from the alcohol being pulled up to the top. Now while I'm waiting on that wicking action to reach to the top, I want to say just something just for a sec about where we want to place this. You don't want to place this on any type of flammable surface where it's plastic, wood, anything like that. And you also want to put it in something that if it does get knocked over and the alcohol, if there's any that spills out, that it's in a safe container like this. So a ceramic pottery drip tray is perfect, but you just want to make sure that you're on some type of surface that's not flammable, because you are dealing with a fuel source and there's always the possibility of it getting knocked over by a pet or a child. So that's another important thing. Make sure you keep this out of reach of small children, and make sure any adults around it realize that this outer can become very hot. So just make sure no one tries to pick it up or touch it in any way. Now when you go to add your coffee grounds, you want to make sure you put this right in the center and hold it by one hand so it doesn't fall over, because as you're filling up the grounds, if it fills to one side, it's very hard to get it to go back in there cleanly. I guess you could shake the can and try to force it back in the center, but this just makes it a little bit easier. And I actually feel the alcohol now reaching the top of it. So I'm just going to pour this off to the side, put a little bit to the side, and then start adding the coffee grounds. And as it fills up, I'm going to straighten this back out and make sure that it doesn't have a lean to it. And you just want to top it off all the way as close to the top as we can get it with our coffee grounds. Now I've added a little bit of extra coffee grounds just to top it as close to the top. We don't want the wick far above the coffee grounds. We want it to be within just maybe 1 or 2/16 of an inch to the base of the coffee grounds, because we want the flame to really cause a smoldering action with the coffee grounds and the cinnamon. These two smells will confuse and repel mosquitoes, and within a probably 6 to 10 foot area, this will actually be a great repellent, and you won't have to spray anything on your person. You won't have to get any expensive sprays and spray it with incredibly expensive sprayers that I've seen on the market that can cost up to $1,000. So some of those fogging machines can be very expensive. So this is just a super cheap way to keep mosquitoes away from you while you're enjoying your deck, patio, or just a hiking trail. Now, as I said, this alcohol will burn much cleaner than a 70%. This is 91% as I mentioned. But one thing that you want to be very careful of doing when you go to add more fuel, you need to make sure this out. So snuff it out and allow it to cool down. If you're having a problem with your wick, if you're not using this particular type of wick, if you're using a piece of cotton or anything like that, and it doesn't have a really good wicking action, you can take a little bit of this rubbing alcohol and add to the top of your wick, and that will help as well. Also, you can go back to step 1 where we added just a small amount of rubbing alcohol. If your fuel source is not burning well for you, you can go up to maybe half, but I wouldn't recommend filling it all the way to the top, because we want the coffee grounds to be the main thing that's producing a smoke and odor that will chase the mosquitoes away. It actually confuses their receptors, and it makes it hard for them to find us, which basically the way mosquitoes do find people is based off heat, movement, and the main thing is the smell of our breath. So this right here actually prevents them from smelling us well, so through our carbon dioxide release as we're exhaling. So this right here is a great way to keep mosquitoes out of a crowd of people. And like I said, you can upsize it to a paint can or even something as big as a pot, maybe 1 to 2 gallons. Okay, so since this is our first lighting, we're going to just add just a little bit of alcohol to the top of the wick. We're going to find our torch, and we're going to light it. Again, be very careful. I wouldn't recommend using a match, or if you do use a match, you need to use a very long match, but something with a long reach like this kitchen torch or one of the barbecue grill lighters. So in a matter of minutes, you're going to see a little bit of smoke coming off this, and this entire greenhouse will have a smell of coffee and cinnamon. Now, since I added the alcohol, we have a little bit larger flame than normal, but what we want is more of a smoldering effect. So you may want to try this first to light your wick without adding any fuel to the top of it, and then see how well it lights. But once this flame dies down, you're going to have a smoldering effect and just a little bit of smoke coming off of it. And that's what we want. We want to fill the area we're in with a very good smelling cinnamon and coffee smell. So if you like those two smells already, you're going to love this mosquito repeller because it works great. It doesn't have any obnoxious odors to it. Now, almost everybody has coffee and cinnamon in their kitchen, so a lot of times you may not have a mosquito repellent, you may not have the right things to keep mosquitoes away, you may not have citronella candles, but this is two things you can put together, and you can use any type of container you want to. As I said earlier, I recommend metal, not glass. And then once it starts that smoldering effect, there's a little bit of smoke building up off it now, and the greenhouse absolutely smells like a coffee shop with just a hint of cinnamon. Now I'm actually starting to see more and more of the coffee starting to smolder, and that's exactly what we want. I created a PDF to go along with this video, and if you look in the description, look at Patreon and then click on that. This is no cost to get it and download it. You can print it or save it to your device, your phone, your tablet, or your computer, and it'll tell you A to Z how to put this together. It's super simple to do. If you want to support the channel, you can become a member of Patreon, and I really greatly appreciate that because I'm wanting to do I have so many ideas. I'm wanting to do so many different types of videos, but I have a limited amount of time. So by becoming a patron, it really helps me to have more time to create more videos. So I wanted to give you a close-up of the smoldering effect, and it really does put off a massive coffee and cinnamon smell. You have to remember that when you're using this torch, be careful not to hold it too close when you're relighting. Just lightly touch it because you can get a little bit of a burnt smell if you get it overheated. So just remember, a very light touch on the torch, and if you're using a long match or a barbecue grill lighter, just give it a quick light on the very center on the wick itself, and then it will just spread out and smolder quite well for many hours. Whenever you want to add some more to it, you can do that just by taking a tablespoon and dumping a mixture in the same components of the cinnamon and the coffee, and you can just keep adding. But it's very, very slow burn, and it lasts for a very long time. And again, as I said earlier, you can make it this size to make it easily fit into a backpack if you're hiking or camping, and you can go up to the size of this paint can here and even larger for a larger group of people. Now, one thing I didn't mention, if you are creating a larger one, as I mentioned in the paint can or even some type of boiling pot, instead of using one wick, you can use up to 3 wicks. Just space them out evenly inside of a larger container, and you'll get a much better effect. You'll get more fumes and vapors off of this, and it'll create a much larger area of smoke if you're trying to do something for a large deck and there's a large group of people. So that will definitely work better if you're using a larger container when you have more people around. Now, there's so many different ways you can do this. I actually thought of another way yesterday. If you didn't have any of the metal canisters but you had a ceramic pot, a small ceramic pot would be great depending on how much coffee grounds you have. Now, you don't have to use new as I've used here. I just broke this out of the cabinet today because my coffee grounds that I had been using, I left them outside with the lid on, and they got rained on after my last event on my back patio. So just remember, it's so important to cover this once you're through with it, because once the coffee grounds gets wet, you got to dry them out and start the process over. So it'll save you a lot of money from having to use new coffee grounds. Now, there is another tip. A lot of coffee shops simply use their coffee grounds and throw them away. So if you go by there and you get a morning cup of coffee, you can ask, what do you do with your coffee grounds, and can I have them? Take them home with you and then just dry them out. You don't even have to put them in the oven. Just put them out on a warm summer day, or a sunny day, I should say, and it'll dry those grounds out. Spread them out on something like a cookie sheet, and you can have all the coffee grounds you need for free. And it may be even better if you don't have enough cinnamon. Some of those coffee grounds may have certain flavors added into them that will act as a repellent, such as vanilla and things like that. So just getting coffee grounds for free would make this even cheaper. So guys, if you have a question about this video or any previous video, and I have a catalog of over 200 different videos, and I hope you'll take a look at some of those. But if you become a public subscriber first and then ask the question, I always put those questions to the front of the line, because I get anywhere from 100 to 300 questions a day. So it's really hard to answer everybody. So I always give priority to anybody who's a subscriber, and that really means a lot to me. It shows me that you're supporting the channel by becoming a subscriber, and I really appreciate it. So guys, I really appreciate you watching, and have a great day.